Let's take a look at where we left off last time. You can see I have a character, I'm moving around, and I left this sort of top part open so that, we can see sort of, where this character's moving. Now, let's come up with like a really quick game on the fly. Let's say our game is a game about teaching people about negative energy. And it's more of a metaphor game. So, for instance, like, say this character, we turn it into like a really drab ghost or like dark character. And as we get close to it, if we stay within its distance, it A, chases us, and then B, takes our energy down lower. Now, something else I'd like to do is eventually, this will be in a future video. I'll have it where I can move the mouse, sort of like World of Warcraft, and I can, as I move my mouse right and left, it'll move the camera too. I think that would make gameplay a lot more fun. And this is really more of an iterative design. As I'm playing through this, I'm moving. It is hard without having that level of control where we move our mouse to actually see where these other NPCs are. Because we could really package this up and grab our NPC and all these waypoints and duplicate it to another section. And we'll do that in another video. But for now, let's add the code or the logic where the character will come within a specific distance to our character now. So let's go ahead and double click move to waypoint here and start to add some variables that allow us to access the character as well as some other things. So in here, I'm going to add some character logic here. So really, this is just stuff that's going to affect the character itself. And again, I love IntelliSense how it adds this stuff, but sometimes it gives you suggestions that we don't need. So for example, this is the character logic, and that would include health, but we would probably put that in its own script and not this new one. So this variable here that I just added is just going to store a reference to the player object. So I'm going to hit Control S to save that. And let's return to Unity and add our player into this public variable. All right, so I'm going to select my NPC, and you can see now we have this public variable here for our player transform. I'm going to grab my player and just drop it in there, and I'm going to hit Control S to save. Now let's return to Visual Studio. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add two variables here. Follow distance is how far away it's going to detect the player before we follow it. So 1 unit, 2 units, as I get within that range, it'll start to change it. Now I have to add another variable called desired distance because otherwise it's just going to ram into our player, and we need to let it know how far away we would like the character to be as it's following. So it's desired distance from following. Now this logic here, if you recall from this if statement here, this first if statement, or I'm sorry, this one is checking how the length of the waypoint. So this is really just checking if we didn't hit 0 for it to go around in a circle. And then this is calculating the direction. So this else area is really where we want to start adding some of the logic. Now, when you think about a character chasing another character, we want it so that when we're within a specific distance, it chases us. And then when we're away from that distance, we want it to return to its waypoint or the nearest waypoint from that array of waypoints that we added earlier. So let's start adding some of that logic. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm calculating the distance and direction to the player object. So this is a variable called player direction. This is the current position of the player, and this is the current position of the NPC. And every frame, we're just subtracting those two values and storing it in the player direction. So as our character is moving, it's checking that distance. It's subtracting those two distances to find the point that's between those two, the point between those two values. Now we have this player direction dot magnitude, and then we're storing it in a new variable called distance to player. So what is player direction dot magnitude? What magnitude does, it takes this value and it checks the distance between the endpoint, which is the player, and the origin, which is the NPC. And then it stores that value inside of the distance to player variable. So another way of putting this is if you think about it as a line between the non-playable character and the player transition, it's that the distance of that entire line is being stored here. Now, we want to take that player direction and we want to normalize it, and that makes it equal to 1. So that kind of like, so we don't have any fractional values within this. So it turns it into a whole number by normalizing it. And it also helps giving it a little bit more of a smooth movement in the direction. And lastly, we want to calculate the desired position, which is this player transform position, based on the desired distance from the player. So this is all going to make sense in a second when we start to put these values in to actually move this NPC. But desired position, right, is, you can really think of this again, is we're really sort of setting up the desired the desired distance, which we talked about before. So desired position is the player's current position, and we're taking all of this player direction information and we're multiplying it. So this is like, if we remove this multiplied desired distance, which is up here, we have it set to 2, and we might have to set it a little bit bigger. If we remove this, what it's going to do is, all it's going to do is take this NPC and it's going to push it or ram it into the player. So this desired position is actually taking all of that information, which is allowing our player to sort of track or move or know, not our player, but I'm sorry, our non-playable character. All of this is really just doing is, where is our player? And then we are figuring out the distance between it, because we're going to be moving it towards that player. And then this multiplied desired distance is saying, hey, take that value of following it, but always keep yourself this amount of distance away. And that way we're not creating like, some combat games, you might want them to be like very close and it's like ramming into the player. But in this particular one, we're making it more of like a ghost or a negative energy person that's following them, and it's zapping them of their energy. So let's add the logic that is going to implement all of this. So that's this if statement here. So I added this comment at the top. If the player is within the following distance or the follow distance, move towards the desired position. So this is what's taking all of this and putting it in practice. So if the distance to player, right, which is equal to this, is less than or equal to follow distance, which I think we set to 5. Yeah, follow distance is 5. If it's less than or equal to, then we're going to take the direction, and the direction is equal to the desired position minus the position of this object. So this is what's really moving it. Now, if you remember from before, our direction that normalizes is turning it to 1, and then we're actually moving it. The rotation is based on the direction, and also the position is equal to the direction. So remember, this is what's moving our character, but now we've added all of this additional logic to check where the player is and then move to that player's position. And that's why we add this in the else statement, because if you look up here we're using direction and all this other stuff to make it move towards, or to detect where it's moving, to detect the direction of the latest waypoint. And then when we're within distance, we actually move the player. So let's save this and see if we did this effectively. All right, here we are back in Unity, and I'm going to go ahead and press play. Now you can see, I'm going to just sort of move it this way. I'm going to walk a little closer. And 2 might be too low, but you can see, because it has, oh, there, it detected me. And I'm going to run away, and, oh, went too far. So let's see if it detects me. Let's actually play with these values a little bit. Let's have some fun. So here's our NPC. The follow distance, we'll keep it at 5. Well, we'll do the desired distance at 5, and the follow distance at 10. Because what we're doing is, if it's 10 units away, we're going to have it detect it a little bit further. So let's see that. So as I walk a little closer, let's see how close to, oh, see, it found me. Now, if I stay here, let's go back. Let's have it detect me. Let's see how far away it stays. So there it is, staying away at 5. Could be a little bit cleaner because it starts to flip out, which might be bad for, the ghoul. Let's see. So, okay, it looks pretty good. It's chasing us. We could probably increase that move speed a little bit. Let's say we take this to 5 so it really chases us. So they get closer there. And we really should add that camera script to. So it's pretty fast chasing us, you can see. And I think my character is a little bit too fast, but you can see it keeps chasing us. But if I get really far away, it returns to the waypoints. So that's it for this one. And the next one, we'll take a look at maybe setting up a health bar system and that it zaps our player of its emotional energy when it's within distance.